She shoved her soft chocolate leather purse and jacket over so Nancy could sit down opposite her. Nancy noticed that the bag matched Deirdre's jacket and skirt perfectly. Her beautifully coppery hair was set off by a ginger-colored silk blouse. Actually, I love having company, Deirdre said after Nancy was settled and had ordered a glass of juice. I was just sitting here thinking how much I miss my sisters and girlfriends back home in Los Angeles. How long have you been on the road? Nancy asked. Oh, this is our first stop, with the movie premiering here and all, she said. I've been away from home for less than a week. I just get homesick really quickly. You'd think I'd be used to it by now. I've been an actress since I was 4 years old. Any other time Nancy would have been fascinated by this inside look at a famous actress, but that day she had other things on her mind. I came to the hotel to talk to Simon, Nancy said. She sensed Deirdre tightening up at the mere mention of Mueller's name. I asked the front desk to ring his room, but he didn't answer. Have you seen him this morning? No, Deirdre responded quickly. No, I haven't. How about Brady? Have you seen him in the past half hour or so? Why do you ask? Deirdre asked, lifting one delicate eyebrow. Is Brady a suspect? I'm just trying to check everyone's whereabouts, Nancy said offhandedly. I haven't seen Simon or Brady since breakfast, she said cautiously. They were having a slight argument over their cereal and grapefruit, so I didn't hang around. I hate it when they fight. Nancy perked up instantly. Does that happen a lot? More than I can stand. Simon is always pushing Brady to do things, and... Her voice faded, and she looked as though she were afraid she had said too much already. What kinds of things does he want Brady to do? Nancy pouted. Oh, you know, publicity things. This morning Simon was telling Brady to ride around town in the limo. And Brady didn't want to? No. Some stars thrive on his attention, but Brady doesn't like having girls scream and yell and faint at his feet. Sometimes they grab at him and rip his clothes. He hates that. And how about you, Deirdre? Do you thrive on attention, or do you hate it? Nancy asked. Deirdre smiled, and Nancy was struck by how natural and easygoing she was. I'm somewhere in between. I would probably be disappointed if I walked down the street and no one recognized me, but sometimes I like this morning. I just like to get away from all the fans and autograph hounds. And that's why you're sitting here? Deirdre nodded. They found you anyway. They always do, she said with a slight shrug. So, who won the argument this morning, Brady or Simon? Nancy asked, sipping the tall glass of orange juice the waitress had sat down in front of her. I think Brady did. He wanted to go back to the theater to look for your friend, and, well, for old time's sake. Old time's sake? Deirdre looked very uncomfortable, as though she had revealed something she hadn't intended to. Ah, yes, Brady has some, memories of this place, of the place. What kind of memories? I don't know, just memories. Did he ever work in a community theater production there? I don't know, Deirdre said, suddenly quite agitated. He might have. You'd actually know better than I. Listen, I have to go now. I have to get my hair done for a date that Simon has arranged for Brady and me this evening. Simon is determined that Brady and I act like an item for a while. You know, publicity and all that. Nancy's curiosity was aroused. Then you and Brady aren't an item? She asked. Deirdre smiled her breathtaking smile. Brady's a sweetheart, and I'm very fond of him. But there's this hunk back in L.A. He's the real reason I'm homesick. She stood and draped her purse over one shoulder. I suppose you'll find out soon enough, but Simon has called a press conference for later this afternoon. Another one? Why? He's going to offer a reward for information leading to the release of your friend. Deirdre sighed. I'd like to say it's because Simon is such a wonderful human being, but you think it's just another publicity gimmick, Nancy offered. Deirdre hunched her shoulders and shook her head, as though she were tired and slightly disgusted. See you around, Nancy. Yeah, see you. As Nancy left the restaurant and walked through the hotel lobby, she realized that the motive for this reward fit in perfectly with everything else she had learned about Simon Mueller. And perhaps the most disturbing bit of information was that Brady Armstrong might have a motive too. He could have worked at the theater. Maybe he loved the old place also, but enough to stop it from being torn down? That's stupid, Drew, she thought. Why would Brady engineer his own kidnapping and then not stop the kidnapper from taking the wrong person? It was impossible, or was it? As Nancy was about to walk through the large revolving door out of the lobby, she heard her name being paged. Ms. Drew, pick up the courtesy phone, please. She hurried to the white phone in the corner of the lobby. George was on the other end. Nancy, you've got to get to the theater right away. George sounded breathless. What is it, George? We were right all along, Nan. Bess is still in the theater. Chapter 8. What have you found? Meet me in Joseph's office. I'll explain everything when you get there. The sound of a dial tone told Nancy that George had hung up. Nancy wondered what her friend had found. To save time, she entered the theater through the back door and wound her way through the maze of hallways toward the front of the theater. As she walked past the stars' dressing rooms, Nancy thought of the day when she had seen Bess knocking nervously on the door. Bess had looked so pretty in her new dress, and she had been so excited about the prospect of seeing the boy she had a crush on 4 years earlier. Nancy couldn't bring herself to dwell on it. What happened. All that mattered now was rescuing Bess. As Nancy neared Joseph's office, she heard voices. George's and Joseph's. They were discussing something in very excited tones. Wait until Nancy gets here. She'll be so excited to hear the news, George was saying. To hear what? Nancy asked as she charged into the room. What's up? Joseph and I found the proof that we need, George said. Come on. Nancy followed Joseph and George as they led her around the auditorium and down the stairs that led to more dressing rooms. Where are we going? Nancy asked her friend. Joseph and I were looking below the stage, first we heard a tapping noise, and then what sounded like someone crying. Bess? Nancy said. George nodded, and Nancy saw her friend's eyes light up. We thought it had to be her, so we went looking. With a triumphant grin, George turned to Joseph. Nancy looked at him questioningly. There's a secret doorway here that leads straight into the orchestra pit, he explained. To prove his point, Joseph opened a closet door and pushed a rack full of costumes aside, revealing a small door. Single file, they passed through the narrow door and found themselves facing the open side of the orchestra pit. George led Nancy and Joseph to a row of doors that were parallel to the pit's walls. What are all these rooms? Nancy asked as her friend opened one of the doors into a tiny room no larger than 6 feet. These were the magicians' warm-up rooms, Joseph explained. Members of the orchestra could warm up in these rooms before each performance. I checked them out myself last night, George said as she neared the end of the road. There wasn't anything then. Now, look. Nancy ran to the open door and peered inside. Joseph flipped the light switch and a dim light came on. Nancy, she was here, George cried as she pointed out a rumpled pallet that lay bunched in the corner of the cubicle. There's her purse and her shoe. We left them just the way we found them. Nancy's heart wrenched as she looked at the lump lying next to the mattress. When she remembered how Bess had complained about those new shoes, she felt like crying. But she fought back the tears and she knelt down on the rumpled pallet. Laying her hand on the blanket, she said, She couldn't have been gone for very long. It's still a little warm. I can't believe we came so close to finding her. Joseph knelt down beside Nancy and placed his hand on her shoulder. At least the kidnapper has been feeding her, he said, pointing to a half-eaten pizza that lay in the box on the floor beside the pallet. Next to the box were 3 empty soda cans. George laughed, but the sound was hollow and bitter. Something's wrong with Bess, she said grimly. Why do you say that? Nancy asked. Because if Bess was her normal self, she would never have left half that pizza uneaten. It's pepperoni and mushroom. Come on, Nancy said. Let's go to the office and call Detective Ryan. He needs to hear about this. Early that evening, the girls were standing in the theater auditorium after Nancy had called Detective Ryan. He had brought his squad out to search the theater once again. After a grueling 3-hour search, they still hadn't found anything. Finally, the police left, advising the girls to give up and go home. But neither Nancy nor George could pull themselves away. Why didn't I find Bess when I searched that room yesterday? George asked as she leaned back against the edge of the stage and massaged her aching back. I swear, she wasn't there then. I'm sure she wasn't, Nancy answered, stretching her legs out in front of her. The kidnapper must be moving her constantly. She could be right under our noses and we wouldn't even know it. Well, we know he moved her just before I went into that room today because the pallet was still slightly warm. I wonder where Simon Mueller and Nicholas Falcone were then. I was thinking that myself, Nancy replied. So when I came up to the office to phone the police, I called them too. And neither of them answered his phone. Brady and Deirdre were gone too. Not that I suspect them, but I figured it couldn't hurt to check. It has to be Simon, George said with conviction. Nicholas and Brady wouldn't do something like this. I'd like to think so too, Nancy said. But someone is moving Bess all over this theater, and whoever it is must know the place pretty well.